Hello, everybody, and good evening. My name's Don Arleth, and you're watching World News Tonight, live from Warsaw. June is the deadline set by the United States for Ukraine and Russia to sign an agreement ending the war. This crucial peace talks update was announced by President Volodymyr Zelensky. We'll have more on that in just a moment, but first, tonight's headlines. U.S. government to fund MAGA-aligned think tanks and charities in Europe. The construction of Hungary's nuclear power plant by a Russian state company breaks ground. And dangerous winter conditions as back-to-back avalanches recorded in Tatra Mountains. 2 people were killed. Washington is turning up the pressure, setting its sights on ending the war in Ukraine by this summer, a deadline that could reshape the battlefield and the diplomacy around it. But after high-stakes talks in Abu Dhabi and a rumored March target for a peace deal, one unresolved question now threatens to derail the entire push. Our defense correspondent Zuzana Jurek reports.
The U.S. is putting its foot down, demanding to see the end of the war in Ukraine by the summer. Though the Americans reportedly floated the March deadline initially, during the latest rounds of trilateral talks in Abu Dhabi this week, that timeframe is likely to slip given the lack of agreement on the key issue of territory.
The Americans are proposing the parties end the war by the beginning of this summer and will probably put pressure on the parties precisely according to this schedule.
According to sources, during the Abu Dhabi talks, the U.S. insisted on the May referendum, which would see Ukrainian people voting on the details of any peace deal. The vote would also serve as the national election. The Ukrainian president also added that Russia presented the U.S. with a $12 trillion economic proposal, which he dubbed the Dmitriev package after Russian envoy Kirill Dmitriev. However, the details are not yet known. But while Russia appears to be playing the diplomatic ball, it has simultaneously violated the week-long U.S. proposed pause on strikes against Ukraine's energy infrastructure after just 4 days.
Another massive Russian attack, in their typical style and effectively in defiance of the diplomatic work that is underway at various levels. More than 400 Russian drones were launched, a significant number of them Shaheds. There were also nearly 40 missiles of various types.
The Ukrainian energy minister underlined the scale of the damage these attacks cause.
Substations and 750 kilovolt and 330 kilovolt overhead lines, the backbone of Ukraine's power grid, came under fire. The enemy also struck generation facilities, the Burstin and Dobrotvirsk thermal power plants. Nuclear power plant units were ramped down by staff. As of now, 4.5 to 5 rounds of emergency blackout schedules have been implemented nationwide, while special emergency blackout schedules are in effect in the eastern and northern regions.
Poland, meanwhile, vowed to support Ukraine in light of the dire electricity supply situation, the Polish energy minister confirmed.
Poland has received Ukraine's appeal for operational energy support. Exports to Ukraine are being carried out while maintaining the security of the Polish energy system.
And as Ukrainians emphasize, above all else, these measures strive to achieve one goal.
Russians are weaponizing winter against Ukrainian civilians, first of all. They cannot reach any substantial gains on the front line, so they're punishing Ukrainians for actually standing strong and not not going with the demands of Russians to give up our sovereignty, to give up our territory.
Particularly that, as the Polish foreign minister stipulated, Russia doesn't hold the cards to play hardball.
Russia's strategic situation because of its aggression against Ukraine has not improved but worsened. When you read in the newspapers that Russia is building new garrisons, for example, along that very long border that it shares with Finland, which has joined NATO as a result of the aggression, well, the money spent on these garrisons is money that it cannot use elsewhere. So it seems to me that Putin, whom some consider a brilliant strategist, is failing repeatedly.
A reality which experts underline is reflected in the deteriorating military realities.
The Russian military is so incredibly underperforming on so many different categories and losing soldiers, amputees, those killed at such a high rate that it is, it has definitely taken a toll on the Russian military.
Religious leaders, including the head of the Catholic Church, urged to see the Winter Olympics as an opportunity for dialogue and de-escalation.
I hope that those who care about peace between peoples and are in positions of authority will be able to make concrete gestures of détente and dialogue on this occasion.
A sentiment that the Ukrainian foreign minister emphasized rests on the goodwill of the aggressor, not the victim.
We support this appeal. We are interested in a ceasefire, and if Russia once again rejects, it will once again confirm who is the obstacle for peace and who wants to continue this war.
The US has already proposed the next round of trilateral talks, and Ukraine has confirmed its participation. The talks could take place as early as next week. For TVP World, Zuzanna Jurek.
There's still no deal, at least not yet. The United States and Iran met in Oman on Friday, but high-stakes talks ended without a breakthrough. Tehran says it wants a fair and comprehensive agreement, while Washington backs its position with a massive troop buildup. With key issues like Iran's nuclear program still unresolved, the world is left asking, will a deal come at all, or is a military confrontation just around the corner? Kashmir's Wishiak has more.
No deal yet between the United States and Iran. The indirect negotiations between the two sides in Oman on Friday haven't delivered a breakthrough, but the Iranian officials are eager to reach an agreement.
We are prepared to engage in negotiations as quickly as possible to reach a fair and comprehensive agreement.
The eagerness motivated by the robust American military buildup in the region, now counting more troops than those gathered near Venezuela earlier this year, when the US forcefully extracted President Maduro. This threat, according to President Donald Trump, seems to be working.
We likewise had very good talks on Iran. Iran looks like it wants to make a deal very badly. We have to see what that deal is. But I think Iran looks like they want to make a deal very badly, as they should.
That deal looks to be not about the thousands of protesters in Iran who got shot and killed by the regime in the beginning of January, with dozens of thousands more put into prisons, but rather about Iran's nuclear program.
One thing right up front, no nuclear weapons. If we could have made that deal 2 years ago, we would have made that deal, but they weren't willing to do that. Now they are willing to do it. So they're willing to do much more than they would have a year and a half ago.
The US leader says there will be a new meeting early next week, and if the Iranian regime needed more convincing, he also signed an executive order on Friday threatening to impose additional 25% tariffs on countries dealing with the Ayatollahs. While the United States and the Iranian regime are set to continue the negotiations, the Iranian people are growing increasingly exasperated. We are here in Warsaw at a march of support for those protesting inside Iran. These are Iranians who are living here in Poland. A few dozen of them have gathered here. And while the negotiations are taking place, they still are hopeful that the US will intervene with a military action in the country to bring about the regime change they so desperately want.
I am afraid of any outcome that says that they will stay, but I don't think so, because we definitely need a military help. Without that, because they're shooting innocent people in the street, random people, they just go, they are mad. We need military force, help.
We don't know exactly what's going on behind, maybe Trump is just buying time now. Maybe they want to do a deal, but I believe if anyone like from US presidents that wants to do this, it would be actually Trump.
The Iranians living here in Poland are also desperate for any kind of information on their families, as the information and internet blackout inside Iran continues. They do hope, however, that the United States will help bring back their freedom. From Warsaw, Kazimierz Łysiak, TVP World.
The U.S. State Department is reportedly set to fund MAGA-aligned think tanks and charities across Europe to promote the American political stance and counter what it sees as threats to free speech. Senior U.S. official Sarah Rogers has met with right-wing groups, including figures in Nigel Farage's Reform UK party, raising concerns that Washington could be trying to influence European politics ahead of America's 250th independence anniversary. Natalia Komarov reports.
Situation take place.
Despite its publicly stated will to withdraw from European affairs, it turns out Washington plans to fund ideologically aligned think tanks and charities across Europe. That's according to the Financial Times.
Senior State Department official Sarah Rogers traveled to Europe in December to meet influential right-wing think tanks and has spoken to key figures in Nigel Farage's Populist Reform UK party about deploying a pot of money to spread American values, according to 3 people with knowledge of the matter.
Except for Farage, famous for his involvement in the pro-Brexit campaign, Rogers also met with representatives of the German far-right party Alternative für Deutschland. At the same time, other US representatives reportedly met with the French far-right leaders Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella. One thing all these parties have in common is their stark anti-EU rhetoric. Sarah B. Rogers is responsible for public diplomacy in the US State Department.
It's important to note that the European censorship bureaucracy often postures as populist, fighting against big tech.
Now she is coming to Poland.
I look forward to my first official visit to Poland, landing in a few days.
Rogers is a vocal critic of the EU's Digital Services Act, which has imposed regulations on American platforms like Meta or X. However, many believe free speech is not actually the issue.
They basically want to have a privileged position in terms of the tech companies doing whatever they want and not being subject to European taxation. They already take advantage of the fact that they can only be taxed in one country where the taxes are lowest, for example, in Ireland.
While previous American administrations also supported certain think tanks and charities in Europe, Washington's involvement in European politics has grown since the announcement of America First policies. Just this week, President Donald Trump loudly endorsed the EU's black sheep, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, who is facing difficult elections in April. Similarly, Trump had endorsed current Polish President Karol Nawrocki, and the Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem had even visited Poland to repeat the endorsement 3 days ahead of last year's presidential vote. Trump's ideological ally and tech billionaire Elon Musk has been vocal about his support for Germany's AfD and Britain's Reform parties. This is in line with the new US national security strategy.
We will oppose elite-driven anti-democratic restrictions on core liberties in Europe, the Anglosphere and the rest of the democratic world, especially among our allies.
A global network of MAGA allies is taking shape. For example, the previous Polish president Andrzej Duda has found employment as distinguished visiting fellow at the ultra-conservative Washington-based Heritage Foundation.
This is different since Trump is being much more selective, and mostly he's fighting, not just competing in a friendly way with the EU, but aims to finish, basically, or dissolve the European Union.
For now, in many European states, publicly siding with the Trump administration might lead to losing precious votes. However, an influx of pro-MAGA think tanks could influence the situation in Washington's favor. For TVP World, Natalia Komarov.
Hungary has kicked off construction of its PAX-2 nuclear plant in cooperation with Russia's Rosatom, with the goal of supplying 70% of the nation's electricity from nuclear energy. While Poland and Slovakia turn to Western partners, Hungary's Russian-backed project underscores a widening geopolitical split in Central Europe. Maciej Wilowski has the details.
Hungary is expanding its stake in nuclear power with Russian help. On Thursday, construction broke ground on PAX-2, Hungary's second nuclear power plant, with workers from Russian state energy company Rosatom pouring the first batch of concrete. Speaking at a joint event with executives from Rosatom and the International Atomic Energy Agency, Hungary's Foreign Minister Péter Szijjártó welcomed the project.
The construction of PAX-2 will mean that we will be able to produce approximately 70% of Hungary's electricity demand with nuclear energy. This will significantly reduce our dependence on international markets and their often completely unreasonable price increases.
Together with neighboring Slovakia, Hungary is already one of Europe's most nuclear-reliant countries, generating nearly half its electricity that way. The country has 4 existing nuclear reactors, the first of which started operating in 1982, all located at the original PAX nuclear plant in the country's south. Hungary isn't the only country in the region betting on nuclear power.
In Slovenia, we are contemplating to build the second block of the nuclear power plant. I think there is also political consensus across political blocks that nuclear energy is the right answer to the question of sustainability and energy independence.
The Slovenian government is considering partnering with French energy giant EDF or US-based Westinghouse Electric to develop the reactors. And in Poland, the construction of the country's first nuclear plant in partnership with Westinghouse is set to begin in 2028 and expected to finish in the middle of the next decade.
An expanding Poland is one that decides on a giant energy leap. Here at this site, we'll have a nuclear power plant. And not far from here, there are giant offshore wind farms being built out at sea.
Like Hungary, Poland could have had its first nuclear power plant in the 1980s, but those plans were abruptly canceled due to a lack of funds, along with public opposition to nuclear power in the aftermath of the Chernobyl meltdown. Central Europe is betting big on nuclear power, but in a sign of the region's geopolitical split, Hungary has partnered with a Russian firm, while Slovenia and Poland chose Western ones. Maciej Wilowski for TVP World.
Tragedy hit in the Tatra Mountains on Friday when two avalanches struck. One on the Polish side caused no harm, but the other on the Slovakian side killed two Hungarian climbers. With wet, unstable snow and a level 2 avalanche warning in effect after sudden temperature rise, Poland's Tatra Volunteer Search and Rescue is urging all hikers and tourists to avoid steep trails and respect the mountain's serious winter dangers. Ovidiusz Nicheja has the story.
The mighty Tatra Mountains form a natural border between Poland and Slovakia. The breathtaking range attracts millions of tourists each year on both the Polish and Slovakian side. But enjoying these mountains comes at a risk, especially in winter. Two avalanches came down in the Tatras on Friday. One on the Polish side, one on the Slovakian. The latter one proved tragic. Two Hungarian climbers were swept away by the snow and brought down some 400 meters. Rescuers rushed in, but it was too late. Both men, aged 37 and 38, have lost their lives.
The Slovakian rescuers called us asking for possible assistance with our helicopter. However, due to weather conditions, it was impossible to fly in.
The recent slight temperature hike could be felt high in the mountains.
Such a sudden rise in temperature is never good for the stability of the snow cover. Conditions are difficult. The snow is wet and a level 2 avalanche warning is in effect.
In such conditions, trails located higher up in the mountains should only be traversed by experienced hikers with proper equipment and avalanche expertise.
We have crampons that we will put on when it gets slippery, we have ice axes, and we have an experienced team, so we are prepared.
As amateurs, we're not climbing anywhere higher. We only hike valleys in this weather.
In 2025 alone, Polish Tatra Volunteer Search and Rescue Association carried out 1,047 rescue operations. For TVP World, Ovidiusz Nicheja.
No speed limits, no traffic lights, just cars racing across the frozen Baltic Sea. In Estonia, a 17-kilometer ice road marked with signs and juniper branches keeps island communities connected while ferry services are halted by severe weather. Piotr Miszczuk has more.
This looks like a regular unmetalled road, but in fact it was paved with ice, connecting two Estonian islands, Hyma and Saaremaa, in the Baltic Sea Strait.
It's part of our winter. It can be fun. You can use it to visit another island, but sometimes it's something that you must do and use because you have no other option. Because ferries and boats cannot cross the sea, then ice road might be the only way.
But an ice journey like this might be fraught with challenges.
Well, they're not prohibited to go on ice. It is dangerous because no one can ensure how thick this ice is on the road. No one measures it. And of course, weather is bad visibility, then there is danger that people get lost.
Even when an alternative exists, an ice road emerges as a preferred option for many a driver.
I'm not afraid because we starting forest works in Vormsi, and this is a better choice to move Vormsi, because if second option was build this ship.
Much below zero temperatures are set to remain in the area at least until mid-February. For TVP World, I'm Piotr Miszczuk.
A fast-track peace deal could end the war in Ukraine sooner than expected, with elections and a referendum possibly set for May. But territorial disputes threaten to derail the plan, and President Zelensky warns that the clock is ticking. So can Ukraine and Russia meet the U.S.'s June deadline? Joining me now to discuss is Miroslava Gongadze, non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. Hello, Miroslava. Great to see you, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Great to see you as well. Thank you very much.
Yes. Now, territory is still the major holdup. Is there a consensus that can be made on this issue?
On territorial issue, what Russia is demanding and what analysts are saying, that basically Russia cannot achieve their goal to occupy or to take away from Ukraine 4 oblasts. Now they are trying to achieve that goal through negotiation. However, it's not clear that Ukraine is any closer to actually giving up the territories, and honestly, President Zelensky cannot really do it himself, because it has to be agreed by the public, by the people. So only if people will say during the referendum that to let Zelensky to give up territories, only that way it's possible. Right now, the question of the territories where this war is supposed to be, like the line of freeze, that's still remaining in discussion, and specifically about the nuclear power plant, Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, that Russia very effectively turned into the military base. It would be very, very difficult to do anything with it, because this is the ticking bomb in the middle of Europe.
Right, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because if we look at the situation in and around Zaporizhzhia and there in Enerhodar, could both of those regions somehow be put together so that, I don't know, maybe a compromise involving both of them, that, I don't know, Ukraine receive control of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and Russia goes back in return for maybe some territory in the Donbass? Is anything like that being discussed or being considered?
That would probably be the ideal situation if Russia would leave the territory. However, they did not take it just to leave it. It looks like, and how they're building up their defenses, they're planning to hold that. The only way I would see this moving forward, if the international community would control that power station and the city around, and Enerhodar around the power station. This is the only way I would say, because this is the only way that would guarantee that nothing would happen with that power station. At this moment, it's a really, really dangerous situation, dangerous precedent. I have been talking to many of the leadership at that Zaporizhzhia power station. I have been covering that story, and I can tell you, this is the Europe specifically have to really seriously think about it, because this is if something happened with that Zaporizhzhia power station, that can be a disaster for Europe.
Yes, it could be, and we don't hear much about that here in Europe. European, officials, politicians taking a stance on that. Now, what if Ukraine agrees to everything except giving up territory that it controls in the Donbass? Could this lead to the U.S. Forcing it to give in these negotiations? Do you fear that could be an issue?
I mean, what we see right now, additional deadline imposed on supposed to make this peace happen. However, we know that those deadlines, we have seen 3 or 4 deadlines, and I mean, obviously, this one is maybe more serious because it looks like the parties are more seriously even getting together, and that's what United States open to have the negotiation on the U.S. territory. That's somehow acceleration of the peace talk. However, we see on the other side that Russia is not stopping. They are bombarding Ukraine heavily, and that means that Russia is basically pushing. I mean, it's a negotiation tactics. They are trying to push the Ukrainian public, Ukrainian civil society, and to make more pressure. They are trying to make pressure on the Western community, showing that the price to help Ukraine and price to Ukraine to withstand would be high. And obviously, they are doing what they always do during the negotiation. They are pressuring to and holding their line that they set for themselves. So we see the acceleration of the diplomatic movement, I would say, but alternatively, we see the acceleration on the front line as well.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Russia has offered the United States an economic cooperation package worth about $12 trillion, dubbed the Dmitriev package. Does this sound like a way for Russia to essentially buy a favorable peace agreement or peace terms from the United States?
I mean, we know that President Trump and his colleagues or his negotiators are very interested in a new, renewed possibility to make business with Russia, and that may be part of their goal to make this war stop, to get to business as usual. And Russia obviously learned that very well, and they are doing whatever is possible. We have to say that Ukraine and United States as well signed the business deal. So we'll see which business deal would win. But one thing I have to say, that the way that President Trump is pushing Ukraine, but as well as Russia, obviously he wants this peace to be done, and he wants this peace to be done before the midterm election in the United States. So maybe that one of the calculation that they are making to bring that negotiation to the United States.
President Emmanuel Macron has recently said that the EU should open the way for direct talks with Vladimir Putin. Do you think that that this would help or hurt this peace process?
I mean, obviously, this war is not only about Ukraine, and it's long ago not only about Ukraine. It's about peace and security in Europe. So Europe have to find a way to put themselves in the middle of these negotiations. And one of the options, as we know, the security guarantees that were discussed among European nations. So far, Russia is not agreeing, as we heard, to foreign troops or European troops on the territory of Ukraine. But maybe that can be a part of this negotiation. So at this moment, every step toward peace would be commendable. The question is, again, and stayed the same. Is Russia ready for peace? So far, it does not look like. And even if this would not be secure peace, meaning that security guarantees for Ukraine and Europe probably know well that this war can renewed very fast.
Right, indeed. So it's probably something that's in the cards. Miroslava Gongadze, non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, thank you so much for joining us tonight and having this discussion.
Thank you very much.
And that concludes this edition of World News Tonight. Thank you for watching. Have a great evening, and see you next time. Good night.